My name is Emily Carson, and for the longest time, I believed that keeping my head down and working hard was enough to protect the life my parents dreamed for me. I was wrong. When I was 16, I lost both my parents in a tragic car accident. They had been everything to me: my compass, my stability, my reason to push forward. What they left behind wasn't just grief, they left a plan. My parents had spent their whole lives saving every spare cent, so I could become the first doctor in our family. They believed in education with the kind of faith only people who worked minimum wage jobs their whole lives could have. I inherited nearly $800,000, placed securely in a college fund trust under the management of my godmother until I turned 18. From that day forward, I devoted myself to honoring their memory. I volunteered at clinics, studied late into the night, and enrolled in a rigorous pre-med program. I didn't care for social media trends or shortcuts to success. I had a mission. Then came Melissa. She married my older brother, David, 5 years ago. On the surface, Melissa sparkled. Picture-perfect smile, curated Instagram feed, designer handbags on a teacher's salary. But behind the scenes, she carried a deep entitlement. Her family had once been wealthy, but financial ruin during her teen years left her resentful. Melissa wasn't the kind to adapt. She was the kind who plotted her way back to luxury. From the beginning, I noticed her subtle jabs at me. Med school? That's what people do when they can't marry up, she'd giggle. You should consider investing in Botox instead of textbooks. It pays off faster. I always smiled politely, refusing to stoop to her level. What I didn't know was that Melissa had been paying attention. When I turned 18, my godmother transferred the trust to me, and I quickly restructured it. I moved the entire amount into a high-security investment account, requiring biometric access and two-factor authentication. I didn't announce it. I didn't need to. But I did mention to David over dinner that I'd paid part of my tuition. Apparently, that was enough. 3 months later, I got the call. It was a sunny Sunday morning, and I was reviewing my flashcards when Melissa rang. She sounded elated. "Emily, I did something amazing. I bought my dream house. And guess what? I used your college fund. Isn't that just brilliant?" My heart nearly stopped. "What are you talking about?" I managed. "Oh, don't freak out. It's for the best. You are never going to make it through med school anyway. Now you'll have a place to stay. The walk-in closet is bigger than your whole apartment." I opened my banking app. The trust was untouched. All 800,000 safe and sound. I felt a chill of realization. She had tried to steal from me. I kept my voice steady. "Can you send me the listing?" She babbled details about granite counters, French doors, a spa tub. I nodded along, quietly documenting everything. Over the next 48 hours, I did more than panic. I investigated. Melissa had used forged documents, spoofed email accounts, and even attempted to impersonate me on the phone with my bank. She had somehow convinced David that the college fund was a family trust, one she had equal rights to. She wasn't just greedy, she was dangerous. But I wasn't a victim. My next call was to my attorney. We compiled everything: call recordings, digital footprints, metadata, bank logs. We were building a case not just of fraud, but of identity theft. But I knew something else. Years ago, Melissa had been in a hit-and-run accident. It was whispered among friends, long buried under time and silence. I reached out to Tara, her former best friend. Tara still had the dashcam footage. I had her dead to rights. When the house deal collapsed, because of course, the funds were never actually transferred, Melissa spiraled. David called me, horrified. Melissa had told him the money was hers, that my parents had left it to both of us. He never verified a word. Now the seller was threatening legal action. Melissa was panicking. She begged me to release the money. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said 7 words. I know about the hit and run. Silence. 2 days later, David appeared at my door with an envelope. Inside were all of Melissa's documents. Her lies, her plans. He had discovered everything on her laptop after the fallout. His world was shattered. I was blind, he said, but I can't let her take everything, not the kids, not the truth. He asked me not to send her to prison. For the kids. I understood, but I wasn't about to let her walk away. We met in a coffee shop. Melissa looked nothing like her Instagram, hollow, ashy, beaten by her own making. I gave her a choice: face full prosecution, fraud, identity theft, her past exposed. Sign over custody, file for divorce, repay David, disappear. She chose the latter. Today, I'm in my 2nd year of med school. The money is untouched. Every time I enter a hospital, I remember. It was almost stolen. My future, my parents' dream, my own. But it wasn't, because I protected it, and she lost everything by trying to steal what wasn't hers. Not because I destroyed her, because she underestimated me. Since then, life has been quieter, but not without echoes. Sometimes I wonder if Melissa ever thinks about what happened. The life she wanted, the risk she took, and the wreckage she left behind. I imagine her in that small apartment 2 states away, scrolling through social media feeds filled with people she once envied, now unable to pretend she belongs. The irony isn't lost on me. David is healing. It's been difficult, but his children are thriving. They ask about their mom sometimes, and he never lies, but he tells them gently. He tells them she made mistakes, that she couldn't stay, but he assures them they are loved, safe, and will never be lied to. And I respect that. I stay in touch with Tara. We joke sometimes that karma finally wore heels and walked in like she owned the place. She's doing well, and we've talked about turning this whole ordeal into a blog or podcast series. Something to help others spot the red flags we ignored. I still visit my parents' graves every year on the anniversary. I tell them about my rotations, the patients I've helped, and the tiny victories that come with the brutal beauty of medicine. I tell them their sacrifices weren't in vain, that their daughter is standing tall, not because she was never knocked down, but because she learned to rise every time. And I tell them one last thing: I kept my promise. No one took their dream from me. No one ever will. And I tell them one last thing: I kept my promise. No one took their dream from me. No one ever will. But life doesn't move on in a straight line. The consequences ripple, some visible, some hidden. After Melissa disappeared from our lives, the silence she left behind wasn't peaceful. It was layered, thick with resentment, regret, and the weight of unfinished conversations. David started therapy. At first, he resisted, saying he just needed to focus on the kids. But after one particularly hard night, when his daughter cried herself to sleep, asking why mommy never called, he broke down. The next day, he signed up for counseling. Slowly, he began healing, not just from Melissa's betrayal, but from years of emotional manipulation he had never fully acknowledged. Meanwhile, I pushed harder in med school. I found solace in the chaos of hospital corridors, in the steady rhythm of sutures and heartbeats. I threw myself into rotations, pediatrics, emergency medicine, cardiology. Each patient reminded me why I endured. Each saved life whispered, "This is why you fought so hard." Still, there were moments, quiet ones, when I wondered how close I'd come to losing everything. A single moment of trust, a single oversight, and Melissa could have rewritten my entire future. But that was the thing about trauma. It taught you where to build your walls and when to leave doors open. Tara and I did launch the podcast, Beneath the Smile. Each episode featured stories from people who'd experienced betrayal from within their own families. It wasn't just therapeutic, it was revolutionary. We heard from men and women across the country who'd been conned, lied to, stolen from. The theme was always the same. Betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it lives under your own roof. One day, we received an anonymous message through the podcast inbox. It simply read, "I know what Melissa did. I'm sorry for not speaking sooner." Attached was an old voicemail from a former colleague of hers, recorded years before she met David. In it, Melissa joked about being too smart for the law to catch up. We didn't need the evidence anymore, but it reminded me, Melissa had never just stumbled into deceit. She had rehearsed it her entire life. As for me, I graduated med school with honors. Today, I'm Dr. Emily Carson, MD. I work in trauma surgery. I save lives on the worst days of people's lives. I see pain, I see resilience, and I see how fragile our plans can be, but I also see power. Not the kind that comes from control, but the kind that grows from surviving what was meant to break you. And every now and then, when I drive home after a 16-hour shift, I take the long route. Past the park where my dad taught me to ride a bike. Past the diner where Mom used to slip me extra pie. Past the house I almost lost before I ever had it. And I smile, because this story, it didn't end in revenge. It ended in reclamation. And the best part, it's still being written.